street, correct?
In terms of Malaysia, I think education is probably one thing they're wanting, the ability to send people here to study. We, in our business, we have close relationships with a Malaysian firm, and we bring people in. It works very well.
James, here at home, exports clearly seem to lead the way, and also high international commodity prices. Are these the two big bright spots for our economy over the next, let's say, year?
Yeah, I think so. We're going to, even with the recent decrease in dairy prices, then they're still well ahead of what they were last year, and that's going to continue to be the way for our economy with export-oriented sort of drivers. And really the household sector here in New Zealand, housing prices have backed off recently. I think the household sector's just feeling the pinch a little bit, and that's not going to be the drivers of where the New Zealand economy is going to be going. It's going to be a bit of a flip-flop from what we saw just 2 years ago, where all the growth was coming out of those household sectors, out of house prices. Now we're going to see export-oriented, and that's good for us long-term.
And Ian, I see that we've had the first trade surplus in 8 years. What does that tell you?
It says we're importing less, is probably my take on it. I think we've been lucky, and James talked earlier about the rapid growth we saw in dairy commodity prices. That definitely has helped. But I think consumers at the moment are trying to retire debt, and they're not spending money on consumer goods, and that's definitely helping rebalance that trade position at the moment.
And unfortunately, we are seeing a fall in some of the commodity prices. Dairy apparently down in July 0.8%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it can affect us.
Yeah, I think so, and Ian just pointed out that we had this trade surplus. It has been a combination of good export prices but lower imports, and there's no question about that. I talked about the household sector. They have been probably spending less on plasma TVs and that sort of thing just recently, but they in time, then that's going to return, and those trade surpluses may not last for too long.
Ian, I see that beef and log prices are also down. How's that going to affect the economy here?
Well, logs have been a real growth sector, been a huge demand for our wood products in China in the last 6 months or so. I think James talked about the potential slowdown in China. I think it will be temporary. There's an ability to choose when you chop those trees down and leave them on the ground another 6 months, just to the Chinese economy undoubtedly will cycle back up again.
Ian, it was interesting. I was looking too at the lending out there in New Zealand at the moment. Banks are still very reluctant to lend to businesses, but apparently there is slow growth for rural lending. Talk to me about that.
I think farmers themselves are looking to retire debt, and I believe that the banks are all willing to lend on good business propositions. The challenge is there's a mismatch between the price of land at the moment and what vendors want to be paid for that land. And until that mismatch works out, I can't see there's going to be a lot of rural propositions that will stack up for banks or the farmers themselves.
James, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's been a combination, probably through the credit crunch. Then banks just weren't able to find that funding. That's eased up a lot recently. They're now prepared to lend money out, but there's also a difference between whether people should be bringing in equity or bringing in debt. There's a combination there. Probably equity is more important at the moment. Some of the recent survey data and business confidence surveys also indicates that businesses are reluctant to spend too much on investing in their plant and machinery. So that's sort of a key driver of borrowing also. They're uncertain at the moment as to what's been going on and how things are going to track. So that's also we're not seeing the demand for borrowing at the moment also.
I'll tell you who else is uncertain at the moment, most likely Fonterra, with the latest DIRA announcement. Ian, what's going on there? That's
an interesting one. I was expecting something slightly different from the government actually on DIRA. I think there's been a lot of talk about the supply of the legislated milk to companies setting up here where effectively they're just looking to take commodity products offshore. I can understand why they've extended DIRA, because it makes it somebody else's issue a little bit further down the track. But I think particularly I was pleased to see the one spot I saw as very important was they are going to review that legislated milk and who can actually qualify for it, because I think ensuring that milk is used to drive the maximum value to the New Zealand economy is important, and I don't think that's what's happening at the moment.
While they're saying, for the record, that they anticipate having input into the legislative changes, they're clearly not happy. They think that it puts them in an unfair position. What do you say to them?
I think it is a very challenging position for Fonterra. The one bright spot this season is at least they can sell that milk for 10 cents above the price they pay farmers rather than just below the price they've been paying farmers. But that's still not a good return on the costs that they have to incur in collecting that milk. So there needs to be a complete rethink as to how we make the sector more innovative. And the DIRA was a great way to get the thing set up, but it needs to be reformed. And I think it's unfortunate we're not going to have that conversation in the next year, but put it back a couple of years.
Some good news, Ian. A little tiny company in Morrinsville called Seals. They've just done a huge deal. Tell me more.
Yeah, there's some exciting things happening around that company.
It's incredible. This is incredible.
Yeah, obviously Andy West has moved there from Ag Research and taken a role there in terms of business development, and he's clearly somebody that's a great thinker about the sector. And then this deal, my perspective is that opens up access to new IP into New Zealand. It gives them an ability to bring different products to farmers. We are moving to a farming environment where more stock feed is being used and needing to rebalance. So if it brings new products into the market, it's got to be a great opportunity, and it must give them an opportunity to take some of their IP offshore as well.
And by having a marriage with Glencore, I mean, this is a company that turns over something like more than $100 billion a year. That is massive for us.
Yeah, and it's important that we build partnerships with these companies while retaining sort of control in New Zealand, from my perspective.
Up next, we ask our guests where to from here. But first, answer this. According to the latest MAF report, what cash surpluses are New Zealand sheep and beef farmers budgeting for in 2010-2011? The answer right after the break, so stay with us. Welcome back to Money Talks. We asked you what cash surpluses are New Zealand sheep and beef farmers budgeting for in 2010-11. The answer, $4,400, despite an increase in dairy grazing in many regions, an expected increase in wool weights and prices, and reduced spending by farmers. Well, the Crayford Farm soap opera continues. The court is giving May Wang, the controversial businesswoman behind Natural Dairy New Zealand's bid for the 16 farms, until November so she can prepare a case to stave off bankruptcy. Her failed Dynasty Group owes creditors more than $22 million. Does she deserve more time? James, let me put you in the hot seat.
Well, I mean, I think we've got to remember this. We've got to do the best thing for the creditors. Recently, it does seem like those payments have been coming up, and if another couple of months for her to sort out a few issues is going to mean more money into creditors' hands, and that's going to be the best outcome for those people that are owed money.
The whole Crayford Farm saga has sparked a huge debate about foreign ownership. It seems like the government has now pulled its punches, isn't going to release the review that it had been doing into the matter. Have they got cold feet, James?
Perhaps they have. I think John Key's made it quite clear that he's wanted to make sure that some of our strategic assets stay in New Zealand ownership, and whether that's going to mean a reform on some of those decisions, who knows? But I guess the intention is that we want to make sure that we hold on to those assets that are going to really drive New Zealand's growth down the track.
What would your advice be, Ian, if the PM called you up and said, "Hey, Ian, I'm just wondering, what do you think I should do?"
It's a really challenging issue. We've been doing some research into it and looking what's going on around the world, and it really ranges from complete ban on foreign ownership of land through to complete ownership permissions with various structures in between. What should we do in New Zealand? Well, the key for me is how do we ensure that we get the productive value out of the product comes off the land? And to be honest, we don't have enough equity in the sector, so we need more equity to be able to drive that improvement in productivity. If that comes from foreign ownership, then I think that's got to be considered. The issue you then want to think about is, do you have some bounds as to how much you let fall into the control of foreign owners? So, really difficult issue. It's a very emotional issue, but I think we need to make sure that we ensure we've got enough equity in the industry.
And how much of the controversy centers around the fact that we're talking about dairy assets? These are worth what? A quarter of our export earnings every year?
Yeah, I mean, dairy's been the bright spot for the New Zealand economy over the past 12 months. So, the fact that we are talking about dairy assets I think is an opportune time to have a look at these things. I think Ian's made some really good points about it's a bit of a trade-off between not giving away too much, but also giving away enough to promote investment in New Zealand. Because down the track, then the best thing may be for us to provide to have equity come into agriculture, so that we can actually get more money out of the sector in general via our exports. So I think that's the hard thing for the government to work out. I don't know what the solution is, but hopefully we get a good outcome.
How long can we afford to wait before we make the hard decision, Ian?
I think it's something we need to think about, because there's undoubtedly a wave of foreign ownership or foreign buyers looking to come and buy land in New Zealand, not just in New Zealand, around the world, because security of food supply is becoming such a critical issue to many governments. So we need to know what our policy is, and we need to have a clearly stated policy so buyers looking to come here know what the rules are in New Zealand. Without that certainty, we could lose equity that we could potentially capture, and we need to get the position right quickly.
So it's a decision that we all have to make sooner rather than later. Are we agreed?
I think it needs to be made relatively quickly, yeah, but I think we need to take the time to get it right.
That's right, and I mean, we can't lose sight that the reason that foreigners are interested in our assets is because they want to make sure that they have food supply. And perhaps we might take it for granted sometimes that we have ample food and we don't have these issues. Other countries do, and that's why they're looking 20, 25, 50 years down the track. We've got to make sure that we've got our sights on that sort of goal also.
Thanks, guys. Around the world and the back 40 in 30 minutes, not bad. Thanks to my guests, rural economist James Shortall from ASB and Ian Proudfoot, agribusiness partner for KPMG. Now, we'd love to hear your feedback, so drop me a line on the website and remember to check out my weekly blog. We'll give the last word this week to the British Treasury. Apparently, Britain's tills are awash with fake £1 coins with £41 million worth in circulation. So if you're headed to London to do a little shopping, be careful. Don't say we didn't warn you. And remember the wise words of Hollywood actor Will Smith. Too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like. Keep the faith. See you next week.